We got today's topic is seed starting for vegetable production. Let me go ahead and share my screen and see what I can pull out. Okay. Yeah, seed starting for vegetable production. Today, we're going to talk about what a seed is. We're going to talk about how seeds differ. We'll talk about the process of starting seeds, and then we'll talk about some of the issues related to seeds, like on a macro level scale. We get a lot of folks. We talk about GMO seeds, conventional seeds, heirloom seeds. And in between, we probably going to talk about a little bit about plant botany, like a 101 kind of deal. Try to give you all some insight on just plant basics. I'm not going to insult anybody's intelligence. This is like high school stuff, but it makes more sense now, for me as an adult, now that I play in the dirt with plants. So our vocabulary for the day, what is a seed? Propagation, germination, those will be some of the terminologies that we'll be digging into. But before we get into the talk for this evening, what I would like to do is I just want to get some feedback from y'all. So we can, you can talk via the chat. What would be some reasons that you would decide to start your own seeds? You know what I mean? Why would you want to start your own plants at home, before going out to your garden? Like, give me, what are some reasons you might want to be involved in that part of the process? Anybody can jump in. Just give me some thoughts onto why. Let's see what we got in the chat. Know your food source. That's one. Transplants, definitely. I've had having quality of your plants. Buying plants from the nursery that are root bound. That's a really common issue. It is more gratifying. Yeah, most definitely. Anybody else? I'll throw one in there. You save money. You know what I'm saying? Like, for real. Like, honestly, you get one of those trays, and I'll show you the tray later on. You get one of those trays, man. It's got like 72 or 128 spaces for you to start seeds in. You could go to Lowe's or Home Depot, right, and buy a plant, a seedling for your garden or your farm, and it might be like $4 or $5 each for one plant. You could buy a pack of seeds for like $5, which will have maybe 70, 80, up to maybe 100 seeds in the pack, right? So you do the math, in terms of how, how much money you can save by starting your own seeds in your home in order to get your thing going, right? I mean, I'm not going to front. I buy stuff. I buy seedlings for for our work at Lowe's or Home Depot or the local nursery or what have you every once in a while. It's because I might not have prepared for what I was doing. I just, you know, I needed to get some stuff and I wanted to just get some stuff in. But when you're really on a tight budget, you know, and you've really dialed in and planned out how you're going to get, how you're going to lay out your space and what you're going to be growing and how much of what you want to grow, it's really easy to start your own seeds. And so today's kind of talk is going to be about that. And then also, you know, addressing some of the other stuff, how to have strong transplants, knowing where or how these seeds, knowing what exactly, what kind of seeds are, you know, going into the ground, or what kind of seedlings are going into the ground. All that stuff we're going to cover. All right, so let me go back to my screen. Let's see. All right, hold up. Let me see. Sorry. All right, boom. So, so let's start here. Actually, let's start with seeds. You know, basically, man, seeds are the fertilized eggs of plants. I mean, that's the best way that I can explain it. It's like the plant's egg is the seed. The seeds contain all of the genetic potential for the plant. It has all the DNA, all the information that plant needs in order to produce itself or to come to its fullness. Are found inside of that seed capsule, no matter what size it is. It could be like the teeniest little dot. It has everything inside of it, from the the embryo, it has some of the food that the actual baby plant is going to need in order to do its initial, coming to life. And it has all its instructions inside of the seed. So this image here is kind of like the stages from which a seed goes from seed to, life. But I'm showing you this just so you can see that all this happens because the seed has its genetic identity inside of its seed coat, inside the inside of it. So they have enough food inside of them to actually sprout. That's the key point that I want you to take away from this slide, is that when a seed is produced, it has enough energy inside of itself for it to get wet and be propagated and germinate, right? So if you take a seed, get it wet, and contrary to popular belief, seeds don't need light to germinate. Once it gets connected, once it goes through whatever it needs to go through in order to germinate, it has enough energy inside of it to actually sprout through the soil in order to start photosynthesizing, right? So, that's important to keep in mind, that, when we start our seeds and when we start our plants, they are designed for survival. They are designed to live on. You know what I mean? Some seeds need to go through some stuff, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But just keep in mind that all seeds have enough energy to actually come to a seedling stage. Propagation. This is our second vocabulary word of the day. Propagation is the act of plant reproduction. Okay? When you propagate a plant, it can happen in two ways. Either it happens sexually or asexually. All right? So asexual propagation is plants being developed from cuttings. So in this image here, what you see, this is ginger, right? And if you've ever had ginger and put it, you know, on a counter or, you know, somewhere in a human space, you'll notice that ginger will start producing plant roots or, you know, little sprouts off the sides of the ginger plant, right? Or even if you bought it straight from the store, right? That is asexual propagation, right? That's a form of asexual propagation. So that means that that plant, that ginger plant, and the same thing happens with your potatoes, whether sweet or regular. Same thing happens with like your onion, you know what I mean? Or you take some lettuce, for example, you know, you might take a lettuce, cut it, and just have the bottom half of it, right? Put that in some water, and it'll start sprouting again, and that's asexual reproduction. Another form of asexual reproduction is taking a tomato branch and making a cutting from that tomato plant or pepper plant or what have you, or a tree, you know what I mean? You might take a clipping from a tree or any other plant and put some rooting hormone on it and then put it into some dirt, right, which we'll practice on Saturday. That is a form of asexual propagation. But, you know, the most common method that most of us know about, or at least are aware of, is sexual propagation, where plants, the plant flower has been pollinated, you know, bees or butterflies or other insects come in and touch the flower of one plant and carry the pollen from that one flower to another flower of the same plant or its or a plant within its family, and sprinkles that flower with the pollen, which gets into the stigma and then fertilizes the egg or the seed, and then, you know, creates the fruit, which will have the seeds inside of it or whatever the case may be. So, you know, the whole talk about the birds and the bees, y'all know how that works. The bird touches the pollen, or the bee or the butterfly touches the pollen. It fertilizes or pollinates the flower, and as a result, we get new seeds. So those are the two main methods of plant reproduction. And most of the time, you know, we're not super involved in the process, especially when it comes to the pollination of plants. The only time, you know, I've ever had to get involved in the pollination of plants, other than trying to help nature do what it already does, is if I was growing indoors, where I had to pollinate, like take a toothbrush, a vibrating toothbrush, and like touch the flower of one plant and then take that pollen and touch another, you know, because there were no pollinators, there were no insects that were there to pollinate the plants in an indoor situation. You know, but most of the time in our outdoor garden, we know how to do all that. We can, if we want to help stimulate and activate and, you know, catalyze the process, but most times you don't have to get into that. But the asexual propagation is a really efficient way to create more plants quickly. You can have what they call a mother plant. You know, a lot of cannabis growers do this. They might have one main cannabis plant, and then they just reproduce it by cutting branches off of it and then putting rooting hormone on that, and then letting those grow root systems when they get in contact with water and moisture, and boom, you know, they have reproduced dozens of plants without having to start them from seed. All right. Let me see. And if y'all have questions tonight, don't hesitate to put them in the chat. I'm gonna try to stay up on checking the chat to make sure that I answer questions along the way. So you don't have to wait until we finish to ask your questions. Third vocabulary word for the night, germination. Germination is the sprouting and the development or growth of a seed. When a seed comes in contact with the moisture, then it sparks its process. The seed will absorb the water and the water and the oxygen in the space activates the hormones inside of the seed, and then it basically tells the seed that it's time to grow. But I will say this, different seeds, just because you put them in water, sometimes you got to soak them. Sometimes seeds got to go through a little bit before they really can activate. So think about it, like in nature, what you have is animals that are eating the fruit or foliage or whatever of plants. And it's important for those seeds to be able to survive the digestion that may occur through, being eaten by an animal. So some of those seeds gotta go through some scarification. They might gotta be wet for a little while before they start to sprout. Some of them have to be a certain temperature before they sprout. So all that is a part of the process to be aware of. Okay, and so in this image here, what you see is a bean going through its process of germination, and this goes back to the original earlier slide, and it talks about the different components of germinated seed. As you can see, this initial sprout is called the epicotyl. This is not the real, these leaves that come off are not the real plant's leaves. It's not the real leaves. These are just the baby, the baby leaves, I guess, if you can give it a term. But one of the things that's important to note is that once that seed starts sprouting, it's growing in two directions at the same time. So what happened is that it's sending down a primary root and it's sending up the epicotyl, the baby leaves. Those baby leaves are only going to last maybe like a week or two. But after those baby leaves, they'll fall to the side. The true leaves will emerge, which are in this image, what they call the young shoot, right? And all inside of it on the side. So if you ever see a bean, you know how you can split it in half, and it has two like parallel sides, right? And in the middle is where the sprout comes out. But the size of that here is called the cotyledons. And so the cotyledons has all of the fats and the energy that the plant needs to whoosh, come up, out of the ground or what have you. So germination, that's the third vocabulary word. It's important for you to know this terminology, just as you go out and do the work and see what's happening with your seeds, or when you plant your plants, so you understand, like, this is the process that happens, for plants across the board. You know what I mean? If it's coming from a seed, it's going through this process in some way. There's different types of plants that manifest themselves in different ways. Again, like I said, asexual propagation. But, when you're talking about small vegetables, typically you're talking about plants that you've started from seed for the most part. All right, so Next, I want to talk about the different types of seed that we have access to. We'll talk about conventional seed, genetically modified seed, certified organic seeds, hybrid seeds, and open pollinated seeds. These are all different types of seeds that you can access to grow. And there's different, qualities and characteristics for each type. So all seeds are not created equal. We would like to see that be the reality, but it's not. So conventional seeds are seeds that have been treated with some sort of product, usually some sort of pesticide, to prevent them from having diseases or having impact from pests. Most commonly, like if you go get like corn, beans, all those seeds. Corn and beans are probably the most common seeds that you'll find that have been treated in some way. All right, so I see we got a question. What we got? Let me see. I need to get back to the questions. Okay, there we go. How are seeds collected and packaged? So there's different methods that are used. There's usually seed companies, right? And there's different types of seed companies, and as we go through each one of these categories, there's different companies that are producing each of these different types of seeds. For example, there's a company called Baker Seeds. Baker Seeds is a company that all they do is sell seeds, and another company is Southern Exposure Seed Exchange. These are the two that I would recommend that you rock with. So what they do is they'll grow a crop specifically for it to go to seed. What that means is that the life cycle of the plants that they've planted in a certain area of their farm is designated for those plants to go through their seed cycle, go through the cycle of life to be harvested specifically to sell the seed. So, for example, they might have grew, 500-600 foot rows of kale, cabbage, or broccoli, right? So if you ever seen kale or any type of leafy green go to seed, it sends up flowers in the air from the plant, and then as those flowers die off, there's seed packs that have developed as a virtue of the life cycle of the plant. So what they do is they go and harvest the seeds from those plants. So same thing for like eggplant or tomatoes or whatever, right? They'll grow crops specifically to harvest the seeds off of, right? The same thing for like conventional seeds, right? So a conventional seed might be a company like Johnny Seeds, right? Johnny Seeds is a big company that all they do is sell seeds. They might, for example, do the same thing, grow, a crop, but what they do is they'll take those seeds that they've harvested and then they'll treat the seeds. So, for example, they might put a coating over top of the seed to make it easier for you to handle, right? Or they might spray it spray it so it has some pesticides, has a pesticide or some sort of pest control or fungus control over top of it. So basically, somebody somewhere got to grow the seeds. So a company like Baker Seeds, though, they'll contract farmers to grow plants for seed for them. You know what I mean? So you might get their catalog in the mail, and the catalog be like, I don't know, 200, 300 pages, right, of all these different types of crops inside the joint. That's because they are basically working with farmers all across the country to grow different types of varieties of crops. Right? So conventional crops are usually treated some way. That doesn't mean they're bad. But you know, if you're one that doesn't want any chemical fertilizers or, you know, chemical pesticides on your plants, then you're going to be steering away from conventional seed. Another type of seed is the genetically modified seed. These seeds have been, like we talked about last week, these are seeds that have been modified on a cellular level, on a gene level, through genetic engineering. They had to do it in some sort of laboratory. And, you know, again, like the dialogue about GMOs is that, you know, people want, or the scientists that do that type of work are very adamant that the reason why they're genetically modifying plants is so that they'll have pest resistance. They'll have different characteristics that will allow the plants to live in different conditions. They might have a desire for the plant to have, you know, or the fruit or the produce to have additional shelf life or something like that, or like an increase or different nutritional values or whatever. You know, but again, people have been hybridizing crops, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but, you know, people have been hybridizing crops for a long time, and you can achieve a lot of those same qualities through the hybridization process, which is something that, you know, anybody can go and hybridize a crop. So anyway, we'll get to that in a little bit. I focus on natural growing methods. I'm not an advocate for GMO crops or GMO seeds at all. So I'm not even going to really get into where you can get them from. But I will say they are out on the market. You know, if you go to, you know, a place like Johnny Seeds, for example, like a big seed company like them, they will have seeds that are genetically modified, and they'll have it notated on it, you know, when you go buy it. Question: can an organic seed produce a truly organic plant fruit if the water being used has been treated? The answer to that is yes. You know, the question about organic, and you know, you weren't on the call last week when we talked about the different definitions of organic, but I'm about to get into that in just a second. But the water has nothing to do, unless it's radiated water that can mutate the plant, you know what I mean? Which is not the case. None of us are living in a situation where the water is such that it can actually transform the inherent genetic qualities of, you know, the plant or can't modify the plant on a cellular level. But yeah, all organic seeds can produce organic fruits or organic plants. You know, but you got to be careful for what the definitions are. So, like, you know, there's a certification for organic. So any seeds that have been grown according to, you know, the USDA's National Organic Program, which is a thing, right? So the USDA has a national organic program where a farmer has to go get certified in order to be able to label anything that he sells, whether it's plants or seeds or produce or seeds, as organic. So there's no genetic engineering allowed. You know, they can't, you know, they can't spray they can't spray chemical, they can't spray chemical fertilizers, but up to so much. So that's the challenge with certified organic principles. There's like a certain like threshold for which you can, you know, do chemical pesticides on your crops and still become certified as organic, right? So you had to look up the USDA's organic program, and then it costs money too for farmers. So sometimes it's prohibitive for farmers to become certified as organic through the USDA because there's a whole process that you need to go through. You got to actually pay for the people to come in and review your farm, which is, you know, it's a lot, man. So I'm not even, I don't even go through that. And then there's like legalities, because you could be out here growing in an organic way, but because you don't have the certification, then you can find yourself liable for like being sued or whatever, which is just it's just too much. So those seeds though that have been grown from a certified organic farm, for example, let me show you. So these are carrots from Southern Exposure Seed Exchange. I don't know if you can see that. It might not focus right. All right. So you see the little label at the top, right, in the corner that says certified, and it says USDA organic. These seeds are from southern states. They're a Virginia company. They're up like going out to Charlottesville, Gordonsville, and they have the space to do that type of work. They specialize in growing crops for seed, and that's how they make their bread and butter. I mean, they do other things, but the farm and the seeds really make a big difference. And shout out to Ira Wallace. This is a Black woman who works, who's one of the leadership. It's been at Southern States for a long time. It's a whole commune, intentional community called Twin Oaks, out in going out to Charlottesville. Mama Ira is a legend when it comes to this seed saving, food narratives, and knowing the history of seeds. She's beyond par excellence. She's really an amazing woman. But she's out of there. She's out of Southern States, and I would advocate for you to get with them. These are Johnny seeds. You know what I'm saying? This is greens mix. So in here is a bunch of different types of greens. So on the back, you know what I mean, it tells you about how many seeds inside of the pack and all that type of stuff, or how much you would grow. But it also tells you what kind of conditions they need to be grown in. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure I showed you some examples of some of the, conventional. This is the guy, Johnny Seeds. They have heirloom varieties and the whole thing, but they also have GM seeds. So, they are equal opportunity. They're like, whoever wants seeds, we got them. But you're not going to get GM seeds from southern states. They don't carry them. Let's see. Go back to the screen. The next type of seed that you might have is a hybrid seed. And so I talked about this last week, but I'm gonna reiterate it. Is that a hybrid and a GMO are differentiated because a GMO crop has to. You can't. None of us can create a genetically modified plant. We don't have a laboratory with a gene splicer that can inject the DNA on a cellular level, of a plant with an animal, or none of that. But what we can do is we can hybridize crops. And this has been something that's been going on for literally thousands of years. Human beings have been creating hybrids of crops by, cross-fertilizing two different plant varieties for whatever purpose that you might want. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons that people hybridize crops, So it's like when we were talking about the sexual propagation methods, where you might take a, brush and like take the pollen off of one plant and then put it on another plant in order to pollinate it. Well, if I have two plants of different varieties, but in the same, family or what have you. So, for example, like, I don't know, let's just take two different tomatoes, right? So there might be one tomato that's like a cherry tomato, and then another tomato might be, slicing tomato, right? It might be a tomato that's fit for slicing, uh, or a drought tolerant tomato, right? So I might take the pollen from the grape tomato or from the cherry tomato and and pollinate the slicing tomato, and then when that tomato produces a fruit, it'll have the characteristics of the cherry tomato inside of it, right? So it might be a whole different type of tomato. Now, when I do that, I had to do it like 6 different times. I had to do it 6 or 7 times, like 6 generations. I had to do the same, like, so once I get a fruit from that process of pollen fertilization, I had to do that 6 generations or six iterations of the plant in order for the genetics to stick, right? And so that's the process. It's something that people have been doing all the time. So the thing about hybrids, and it's capitalism, man. So somebody might hybridize a crop, right? And they might make the next hottest pepper, right? So, they be like, yo, I don't want nobody to sell this pepper because I put I'm the one that bred it. You know what I'm saying? So a plant breeder might actually go out and be like, yo, this is my trademarked pepper. And so they go out and then, they be like, you got to get all the seeds for these plants through me. And I'm the only one. You know what I'm saying? So, people, man, they wild. People just, some folks are just, I don't know how to explain it. It's just, I'm not that restrictive about it. I don't, if I could do it in my own greenhouse, I'm like, if I can do it, anybody can do it. So, but some guys are really like hard pressed about, their creations, quote unquote, of plants. So, what's interesting is that when we do hybrids and we plant hybrids, what we've realized is that those hybrids usually go back. They usually will, after a couple of generations, they will revert back to their original parent variety. And whichever the dominant variety was. So, for example, like you might try to save seeds from, a habanero, a very special like ghost pepper, super hot, right? But if you try to save seeds from that crop, it's unpredictable. You might get a ghost pepper the next generation, but you might not. So it's always like a dice game. All right, so we got to check. How healthy is eating hybrids? You know what? That's a whole nother talk. But I'll say this: we all eat hybrids. There's no crop out here that is not a hybrid. And it's like, so all right. So I'm gonna drop this on you. So I have had the experience of like, traveling and going to like these different conferences, right? So the original crops that, all of our plants, the produce that we eat, originated from what is called wild crop relatives. Like these people in these botanical garden and science, and the folks that are really concerned about like climate change and shit like that are studying wild crop relatives or the original crops that are the derivative of what we eat normally in the grocery store. So, for example, I don't even know. Damn. So the original carrot, there's a carrot that grows in the wild that is the original version of the carrot that we eat. Now, like the orange carrot is not the original carrot. Like the orange carrot is a hybrid carrot. You know what I mean? It was bred specifically for beta carotene and the orange color, right? So some botanist, I don't know his name, you have to Google it, you know, maybe in the 1800s, it's probably like the 18 late, because they've been, I mean, I'm telling you, like in the 1800s, like all this. So what's wild about the botany thing is that the folks that really did the work around botany, what's his name? Carl, oh shit, it's on the tip of my tongue. Carl Linnaeus. So Carl Linnaeus is a botanist, right? And so he goes and creates what we call binomial nomenclature. Binomial nomenclature is the system through which we get Latin names for shit. So, for example, Homo sapiens, or cannabis sativa, or you know what? I suck. That's all I know. There's a bunch of other ones. But there's a bunch of other Latin names for plants and animals. So what he did, Carl Linnaeus goes and catalogs all of these different plants and animals and species and create, you know, the phylums and the kingdoms and all that type of stuff. This dude's racist. He's a racist. And he's the one that comes up with, you know, this idea of like Africanus, Americanus, Asiaticus, and Europeanus, right? So he's the first person to scientifically try to categorize all the human families. And what he does is he categorizes them, and then he gives these subjective definitions to them and says, you know, the blacks are lazy and slow, and, you know, the Americanus, the Indians, they're sneaky, and, you know, they're like, you know, he puts all of them on this hierarchy of human value and puts white people at the top. I'm saying all that to say that the people who gave us the names for these plants, and like a lot of the people that actually did the work of breeding these plants actually were staunch racists and believe like human beings, like white people, were at the top. Anyway, I'm on a hell of a tangent. But I'm gonna get back to the point. So you asked if eating hybrids is healthy. I say yes. I mean, you know, we got the Dr. CB folks and the alkaline and the non-alkaline and non-hybrid and hybrid. You know what I mean? Bruh, I'm telling you. Yo, all plants are hybrids that you would be able to access and get to eat out here in the world today. They're hybrids. Like you go to the grocery store, every crop there is a hybrid crop. I'm sorry. There's no way. Like, you know, the only way that you can get like wild crop relatives is if you live in like a jungle environment. If you live like in Costa Rica or, you know what I mean, Brazil, you know what I mean? Like most of the crops that we eat have been hybridized so that they have improved shelf life, that they are pest resistant or what have you. Like this is facts. Sorry to tell you. You know, bananas. Oh, and so look, so check it. So I see people all the time going in like, I don't eat no seedless grapes. I don't eat no seedless watermelon. I'm like, I don't eat no, well, whatever. It don't have no seed. Like they do this thing like, yo, I'm trying to tell you, I'm going to tell you this. And you can tell them that I told you. All of those crops got seeds. The seedless watermelon has seeds. The seedless grapes have seeds. The only thing, the difference between these crops is they have been bred so that the seeds are small, so that you can eat more, you know what I mean? So it's like, for example, like you don't have to spit the watermelon seed out. They bred the watermelon, the quote unquote seedless watermelon, so that the seeds are so small that when you eat the watermelon, you don't have the seeds to interfere, right? Classic example of this is the banana. So the banana, Chiquita banana, racist, they took over Hawaii and all that stuff. It's a whole deep story about Chiquita banana and the shit that they did. But anyway, the banana has seeds. When you split a banana open, there's little black dots in the middle. Those are the seeds. But there are, that yellow banana has been bred to have small seeds. The bigger, the bananas that grow in the wild are usually smaller, right? And they have much bigger seeds inside of them, So, that banana has been bred for sweetness and all that type of stuff. So, this is facts. I'm sorry to burst your bubble, Dr. CB folks, but the seeds are inside of the grapes. They are inside of the watermelons, but they have been bred through the process of having a greenhouse, and, it's out on the market. But yeah, so, there's another comment on here. Purple carrots taste better. That's the thing about breeding. Right? There's so many different varieties of carrot. There's like white carrots, there's purple carrots, there's red carrots, there's orange carrots. But, because we live in the society we live in, you go to the grocery store and all you're probably going to see are the orange carrots, unless you go to like one of these Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, one of these healthy kick spaces that, someone that might appreciate that diversity will be in. So anyway, when you buy seeds, hybrid seeds, they will be labeled. They'll have, hybrid on it, and somewhere on the seed pack, they'll have it on it. And they're usually probably more expensive because of the, particular characteristics that exist inside of that particular plant that you're buying it for. When you buy the hybrid, you're buying the hybrid because it has a certain characteristic that has been developed inside of it. Okay, and then the next to last is the open pollinated seeds. So open pollinated seeds is, again, somebody like I was talking about with Southern States, open pollinated seeds will have the same characteristics every generation because they've generally for generations, for several generations, they've been growing the same way. They'll have the same characteristics of the parent plant because I guess, I don't know, it's like the DNA has been rooted inside of them. So, the wind, the birds, insects or whatever, will do what it naturally does. When you're saving seed, you're going to want to have open pollinated seeds, or crops that have been grown from open pollinated varieties, because then you'll have much more, you'll definitely get the same crop that you grew again. You know what I mean? So like the hybrids, you might not, but with the open pollinated varieties, you definitely will. So that's the thing. The next one. Okay. Yeah. Heirloom seeds. Okay. So heirloom seeds are important. Heirlooms are plant varieties that were grown in earlier periods of history and time. So, but they never really were like mass produced, you know what I mean? So it's like more like niche or vintage crops, if that makes sense. Yeah. So like, so for example, heirlooms can be open pollinated. So for example, we grow, I'm trying to think, what was that? heirloom variety that we grow. Oh, I don't have anybody here, but like red corn, right? So the blood butcher blood corn, or the rainbow glass corn, like the Native American corn, right? So those are heirloom varieties of corn, right? And they were never like mass produced and sold. But if you get a package of blood butcher corn and plant it, and it goes to seed, the next time you plant it, you'll get blood butcher corn. But it's an heirloom variety, right? And the thing about heirloom varieties is that the more heirloom varieties that we have access to, the wider the biodiversity that we will have in terms of our diet and in terms of the plants that we have on the planet. The challenge with the way that we engage gardening, like conventionally out here in the world, is that there's only so many varieties of plants. So if you go to the grocery store, you see it's probably like 16, 20 different types of plants. But the world of plants in terms of produce and like vegetable production, there are hundreds of varieties of every type of crop you can imagine to grow, and there's hundreds of heirloom varieties of these crops. You know what I mean? So for example, like there's like hundreds of varieties of eggplant, hundreds of varieties of heirloom varieties of carrots. There's hundreds of varieties of tomatoes. There's hundreds of varieties. So when you go to the store, we used to say, okay, go give me some tomatoes. When we talk about heirloom varieties, like what type of tomato are you talking about? There's a lot of different varieties that exist out here. And that's part of the beauty, of this farming and growing work, is that you literally get to taste, the diversity of the globe in terms of these varieties of crops. And, some people, I think, like when we talk about how old a plant has to be in order for it to be an heirloom, it's like they say it's like if it's been around for like 60, 70 years, then it would be called a heirloom variety. You know what I mean? So it's like a plant that has locked in its genetics. You can trust that it's going to come back the same. That will be an heirloom. You know what I mean? There's so many heirloom varieties that are lost because people are not planting these plants. So it's important for us to like pick that stuff up and start, keeping those varieties alive. For example, there's like black tomatoes, that are heirloom varieties. Like there's a Paul Robeson tomato, which is a black tomato. It's a very dark purple heirloom variety, right? But if we stop planting that variety, it will no longer exist. The thing about heirlooms is that a lot of them have stories attached to them, like the people that grew them. For example, there's a type of fish pepper. I can't remember the black gentleman's name that actually grew these Pippin. I think it's Henry Pippin. I might be messing up his first name, but Pippin's peppers, like these fish peppers, are a heirloom variety that he actually, generated back in the 1930s. You know what I mean? And it's been in existence ever since. But if we, don't plant that variety, then that story of that particular pepper that he, created will be lost. Another part of, so it's like this historical piece. Another piece of the puzzle for, or kind of like the case for planting heirlooms is that, we help keep the gene pool alive for future generations to be able to experience the wide diversity of different types of varieties of the food that we eat. Taste. A lot of these varieties are, you'll have a whole different experience with your food by virtue of tasting the different varieties other than what you normally would get inside of the grocery store. I mean, the thing about it is that, most of us haven't had the experience of, like an African pepper, right? Or like a guinea pepper. That's like an heirloom variety that, exists because of, the travel from Africa to the Americas. You know what I mean? So that variety has a particular flavor profile that, may be much more conducive to people of African ancestry, might send some epigenetic memories or something like that. I mean, it's just, it's important to think about how there's so many different types of tastes for food. Like, I mean, you might not like eggplant, right? But it might not be that you don't like eggplant. It might be that the variety of eggplant that you ate didn't agree with your palate. You might like the Boma eggs, which are West African eggplant, which are white, which are harvested when they're white. If you leave them on the vine, they'll turn red. Which who's ever had red eggplant? And they say it tastes nasty when it's red. But anyway, the fact that there's a whole type of eggplant that you might not have ever been introduced to, because you go to the eggplant, you think purple, big, fat. This Boma egg is like small and white. I mean, think about the Fen Long eggplant from I think it's Japan, is slender and long. It's like this long and slender. I mean, So anyway, the question that we had: will you have to create the same environment that the heirloom came from? No. So remember I was telling you about the hybridization process? So when you hybridize a crop, you need to do it for 6 generations in order for it to lock in. Now, if you continuously, do that process of locking in the genetics and pollinating it for successive generations, then it will lock in and become stabilized in terms of like reproducing itself. So the heirloom varieties are what might have been hybrid versions that have locked in their genetic code, right? So you can put a heirloom variety out here in the world, and it will reproduce itself into, the next, it will reproduce the same plant that you planted when you plant it. So you don't have to have you don't have to have like a special area where these crops are, but at the same time, just know that in nature, like plants do hybridize. So like if I've had squashes, right, that I planted too close together, and one was pollinated, like a crookneck squash and the zucchini got mixed together because, the butterflies cross-pollinated it. So, when you're planting your heirloom varieties, you also got to be mindful that, this hybridization happens in nature naturally. It just will, if you got 2 different varieties of the same crop next to each other, then they could cross-pollinate and create a third, fruit, a new fruit, or a different fruit than what you expected, I should say. Also, heirlooms have adapted over time, as a result of evolution in the climate and the soil. So they're just like suited for specific areas. And so that's part of the qualities of those heirloom varieties, is like I might pick this variety because it's drought tolerant, because it was grown in an area that's very arid, you know what I mean? Or it might be pest resistant because it, has been evolved to deal with the pests in that particular environment. So when I plant it, I don't have to worry about X pests so much on this particular crop because it's been bred to resist those ideas. You know, the biggest thing that we also need to think about in this work when we talk about loss of crop diversity is that, you know, fewer and fewer crops are being grown. When we go to the grocery store, I keep going back to going to the grocery store, and I challenge you to go to the grocery store and count the varieties of tomato that are available for sale, or the varieties of squash, or the varieties of pepper that are available for squash. And if you go, you know, if you go to a grocery store that's over, I don't know, 25 varieties of any of the vegetables inside of the shelf, then you might be in a space like a Trader Joe's or a Whole Foods that has like a wide array. You know, we only know, like most of us can't even count off more than 15 varieties of crops. Like if I challenge you right now to name over 15 varieties of crops, you know what I mean? A lot of us would struggle. We like carrots. I'm like, no, tell me different names of carrots, like different types of carrots. Or, you know, we might be able to do it with like peppers. But if I was like, yo, name me five varieties of potato right now, most of us couldn't do it. It'd be like Yukon Gold, Idaho Red, and sweet potato. But there's literally like, you know, dozens upon dozens of different types of potatoes out here. And so, you know, there's a whole like initiative with like the United Nations called the Food and Agriculture Organization that's working, you know what I mean, to like try to increase the biodiversity of crops. I mean, the biggest part of this is that as we experience climate change, there are different crops that are more capable of being grown in our changing environments. So, you know, we're only relying on like 12 different crops that we know, but the climates in our state and our regions are changing, then we need to be able to get diverse crops from other places that may be more in alignment with the new normals of the areas that we live in, right? So that's a big challenge, and it's important to be aware of it. And we'll talk about also like how, you know, there's a lady named Vandana Shiva. I'm gonna show you a video of her in a second, because she's really important when we talk about like corporate control of seeds. So there's a whole, so with the seed, with seeds out here, there are companies like Monsanto or now Bayer, you know, these large biotech firms that are buying up seed companies so that they have control over the seeds, and they limit. These are also the same firms that are doing genetically modified seeds, right? So when we think about vegetables, that's usually not the case that these folks are dealing with. They're dealing with like, I mean, they are dealing with vegetables. So I think about like corn, soybean, cotton, and I mean, tobacco, you know, like these are like the main crops that are grown out here in the world, right? Like those are the major crops. Like when we think about our ag systems, like it's not, our ag system doesn't run on eggplants and, you know what I mean, peppers. Like our ag system runs off of corn and soybeans, right? So corn is, you know, what we get high fructose corn syrup from, right? We get high fructose corn syrup from corn. And so people are growing tons and tons of corn all across the country in order for us to get sodas, you know what I mean, candies, and all this type of stuff. right? Soybeans are turned into a whole bunch of other stuff. But for all intents and purposes, just going to talk about the corn for that second, because I can't remember what they make. Oh, tofus and feed for animals. You know what I mean? Like they grow this stuff for all these other entities. So anyway, these companies have patents on the seeds. So a farmer goes to buy some seed. He got to buy the seed every year from this company because they have a clause that you can't take those seeds, take those plants to seed. You can't open pollinate those seeds that you buy from these big CBT companies. And if they find out that you do it, they'll sue you. And that's been happening to farmers all across the globe. So, they might have a pest-resistant, a disease-resistant corn or disease-resistant cotton, right? And, the farmer buys that particular variety, but he can't save the seeds from it. So every year, he's got to buy more seeds from this company. You know what I mean? Which is crazy. And, this is the challenge that we're facing with, corporate control of seed companies. So part of our mini rebellion is we grow our own crops and we save our own seeds from crops, and we definitely don't mess with no GMO stuff to kind of take control back of our food system, right? The challenge is also, these GMO crops are being introduced into the environment, and it's destabilizing, how people normally would grow things. For example, the guys that grow our cotton, they live in India. A lot of our cotton comes from India now, right? So they're growing what has been advertised as disease-resistant cotton, right? But it's only resistant the first couple go-rounds. And then the bugs develop a resistance to the disease-resistant cotton. And so then, this guy is locked inside of a twisted relationship with the seed company because he has bought the seeds from that seed company, and now this next crop has been devastated by the pest, and now he might be in debt because he planted all this stuff out expecting to get a return on it, but it didn't work. And so now, he's stuck with having planted all this stuff out. It's been devastated. It's he had crop insurance and all this type of stuff, which, is something very unique to the American system of agriculture is having crop insurance being subsidized by the government. That doesn't exist everywhere else. We live in an illusion of of cost for food because of the way that our system is set up. But that's a whole nother tangent. But anyway, so the company then develops what they advertise as a more resistant. It's kind of like your iPhone, right? We get stuck with the iPhone, and every year they come out with an upgrade for the iPhone, right? But it's kind of like planned obsolescence because, every time the update come out, your phone stop working, right? So apply those principles to GMO seeds, right? So you locked into a contract where you only can you can't take those seeds and pollinate and then save the seed from them. You have to buy it from that company, but then the seeds stop working in terms of the pests that are in your environment, and actually those pests are become even more stronger and powerful because they overcome whatever the genetics were inside of the crop that you were planting. So now you go back to the folks that sold you the original seed or the original genetically modified seed, and you got to buy the newest version of the genetic modification in order to beat the bugs that have been developed, that have mutated or evolved by virtue of the last stuff that you put down. It's a wicked system. Anyway, so I want to introduce you here to Vandana Shiva. I'm going to play her TED Talk real quick because I think she can help explain what the folks in India have been experiencing much better than I can. But I think she's also a great example of a person who has dedicated their lives to addressing the issue of corporate control and the problems with GMOs in our system. So I'm going to get her, let's make sure I'll get the right one. Give me 1 second. And because I want to play the long one. Let me see. I'm going to play this one. Okay. Okay.
When is the farmer's own seed? And I will...
Okay.
Seed saving is the most important thing to do in our times. Farmers have been made to believe that they can buy seed every year, but what's available in the market is chemically bred seed, coated with neonicotinoids, genetically engineered seed. So if you want to do real farming or real gardening, you need your own seed. The nature of seed is to go to seed, to multiply, to be shared. And all the new laws are designed to prevent us from saving seed, to make seed uniform rather than diverse, and to remove human intelligence from the reproduction and breeding of seed. And so you're a scientist when you start to save seed. Much better scientist than those shooting genes with gene guns blindly, not knowing what they're doing to produce GMOs. You're a scientist in service of life on Earth. But there's a second reason why everyone must be a seed saver. Because the colonization of this planet and life on it is taking place through seed, through genetic engineering and patenting. And that's why in 1987, I started the movement to save seeds and created Navdanya. I'm so happy that with Navdanya and Navdanya International, the garden that Rishi and Manju and the family has built here in urban California is showing another way. California is such a disaster of trying to grow food in a desert, pretending you are in a wetland. And that has led to violence, both to the people whose water's been taken, but it has led to violence against the earth, and the drought of California should be a wake-up call. So get out of the supermarket, get out of the drought, get out of seed slavery, get out of food slavery, sow your freedom by knowing your seed, saving it, and this video that has been prepared will help you with starting that farm.
I'm going to show you this one last joint.
Mother and wife.
Transition to how we start our own seeds.
So I could actually have spent all my life in the city and being a Mumbaikar, if I had stayed on at the BARC, the Bhabanomic Research Center, and why did I go back to my hometown, Dehradun, and why do I do what I do today? It's a combination of the fact that I learned a lot from women in my region in the Himalaya. Peasant women, never been to school, top biodiversity experts, changed the policies of this country. The policies that used to say the most important product of the Himalaya is timber, and they changed it to the most important product of the forests of the Himalaya is soil and water and pure air. This was the movement Chipko. And in the 70s, I got involved as a volunteer. And can you imagine just the deepest love for the forests, bringing about change through a totally non-violent movement. It opened my eyes to another way of looking at the world. And I learned two lessons then. First, that nature is not out there. We are part of it. And second, that protecting nature is not a luxury. Our Prime Minister still needs to learn a few lessons from women like that, who thinks environmentalism is a problem because it interferes with growth. It's not a problem because the very foundation of every economic activity is the rivers and the land and the forests and the biodiversity. And all the top readers are gathered right now in Cancun, trying to figure out how to avoid disastrous climate change. But the lobbies that have caused climate change are preventing it from happening. If you just look at what's happening in the area of food, and it's delightful to be here with you all opposite a kitchen. Very rare to have food for thought and food for the body in the same space. So congratulations to the organizers for choosing this venue. Now, what's the reality of food in India right now? First, that on different approximations, between half to 3/4 of this country isn't eating enough. At a global level, 1 billion people are going hungry. Another thing unprecedented in our long, long history, in one decade, from 97 to 2007, 200,000 farmers have committed suicide. 1 million children are dying every year in this country for lack of food. And there's studies done in Maharashtra and Thane which show that in the tribal areas before 91, before the new economic policies, there wasn't dramatic hunger, but now there is. We are giving 1.3 trillion rupees, that's bigger than our defense budget, as subsidies for poisoning our soil for synthetic fertilizers. You add up all these things that seem to be different aspects. Some people look at children's malnutrition, some people look at climate change, some people look at land. It's all interconnected, and it's all interconnected through a very perverse way of thinking that we have inherited from a highly patriarchal form of thought. Capitalist patriarchy gave us first the assumption that nature is dead when it's very much alive. First error we need to correct, and women are correcting it. Second, you have to declare nature dead to establish man's empire over nature, always man's empire over nature. That means all species can be exterminated, people can be dispossessed. It was actually called by Bacon the birth of masculine time. Literally, they shaped a way of thinking that would be a masculine mode. But it obviously robbed the men of half their brain and women of all of their thinking, till now we have a resurgence of a holistic thought. Inevitable consequences of it, a mechanistic view of the world that could not see interconnections, that could not see cycles. And the second thing I love about the space is the circles, not linear benches. We're all sitting in circles. Now, if only we could think in terms of circles and cycles. We just had a performance about the rivers. Yesterday I was in IIT Kanpur, to discuss the whole issue of the cleaning of the Gangas, which, as you know, the government is finding very difficult in spite of spending millions. They can't get it right. But they can't get it right because they've broken the cycle. The cycle of our nutrition that should go back to the land is today going as pollution to the rivers. If only we corrected that through good town planning, good sanitation, we'd have no problem of soil fertility, and we'd have no river pollution either. Another very, very important problem, that kind of mechanistic thought becomes blind to diversity. I have called this the monoculture of the mind. And this starts to do a number of things. You destroy food systems and you say you're growing more food. If you were growing more food, there wouldn't be 1 billion people starving. If the Green Revolution had given us more food, half of India wouldn't be starving today. The monoculture of the mind has succeeded in transforming this country from a land of abundance in pulses and oilseeds and cereals and millets into a land where we are importing dals, and we are now making fake dals. I notice all of you have Apple computers. So Apple gave us iPod, it gave us iPad, it gave us iPhone, and the government's giving us an iDal, which is not a dal. It's basically soya bean reconstituted and colored yellow. Now, if we're going to try and fake ourselves on food, the point is we can fake the supermarket shelf, we can fake the consumer, but we cannot fake the body. And I know we will hear a lot more about this from Vijaya Venkat, who has spent a lifetime trying to talk about the truth of nutrition. We use 10 units of inputs to produce 1 unit of food. How inefficient can it be? And then we are creating scarcity. Scarcity by turning seed, for which 1 seed gives 1,000. And the reason the millets, which are the forgotten foods, as we call them in Navdanya, the reason they're called millets is because each seed gives 1,000,000 seeds. That's all that is shared between the family of crops called the millets. We now have brilliant ways to prevent multiplication of seed. Genetic engineering, terminator seed, patenting, which makes it illegal for farmers to save their own seeds. That is behind the farmers' suicides. The high-cost seed, high-cost chemicals, debt, and indebtedness, then leading to the suicides we witness. So how are we changing this genocidal and ecocidal system that is both destroying the land, the water, the biodiversity, the lives of our farmers, the lives of our children? First, by recognizing one simple thing, that biodiversity is not a problem. The diversity of species, that is the base on which we produce our food. You kill the soil organisms, you won't have food. You kill the bees and pollinators, you won't have food. And the beauty of it is each of us can be the change we want to see in the way food is grown. Today, industrial farming is giving us climate change, water pollution, water waste. It's destroyed biodiversity. We used to eat 8,500 crops. We are eating 8 commodities. It's destroying, of course, the farmers and public health. But eating is an ecological act. Eating is an ethical act. Eating is a political act. And eating is an agricultural act. And the separations that have been made between those who grow the food and those who eat the food, if only that link could be closed the way we are trying to close the loop in Navdanya, miracles start to happen. Miracles like the paradox that the more you eat biodiversity, the more you grow it. But if you don't eat the millets, who will grow it? If you don't ask for the authentic dal, it won't be grown in this country. And we've seen the way the government is going, we're not going to get clean, honest policies for a while. It depends on citizen action to make the change. The other thing that agriculture connects to all of us is the fact that in the act of eating, you are actually becoming partners with the farmer. There is a very false way of thinking that's saying that agriculture is something that can be forgotten, and they have another linear line. agriculture, industry, and we are working in a space that used to be a factory, and then services. But show me a person who is in a software company who has stopped eating. You still need the food. And the fact of forgetting about agriculture, forgetting about our farmers, forgetting about the seed, forgetting about the soil is at the root of the huge food and agrarian crisis. You are privileged, you don't suffer it. But the producers are the worst sufferers of the food crisis. I can't go into detail about how that happens. All I can do is invite you to join this revolution for life that women are leading. Food, after all, is life. And every one of us eats 2 or 3 times a day. The greedy might eat many more times. But every time you eat, you can make a massive change. You can throw your weight behind ecosystems, behind diversity, behind farmers, or you can throw your weight behind greed, behind super profits, behind ill health that is killing both this planet and people. Make your choice. It's easy. We've done it. And it's just a matter of eating right and thinking holistically. Thank you.
All right, that was Vandana Shiva. You know, she puts a really great like encapsulates like what we are talking about when we're talking about, you know, growing food. You know, that all of these systems are interconnected. And, you know, for me, you know, just as, you know, I've approached this work and come into it, it's helped me understand just how, you know, complicit we all are, you know, on a much larger scale of planetary, like, devastation. Like when you start really thinking about, okay, well, where does, you know, the waste go when all of us eat and, you know, toss trash out? Where does it go? And how does that impact, you know, somebody else? You know, we think about stuff like climate change, like all this stuff is happening. It's not growing food has made climate change for me much more real. Like I heard people talk about it, you know what I mean? We saw the hurricanes and all that type of stuff, but when literally growing food and you see like, yo, it's supposed to be spring now, you know what I mean? And it's a frost. You know what I mean? Like it's cold in May. Like we have like below freezing. This year we had like below freezing in May. You know what I mean? Like that's not natural. That's not how it's supposed to be. You know, like we're growing tomatoes into November. Like we're not supposed to be able to grow tomatoes in November. Like that's not how it's supposed to work in Virginia. But it does because the climate is changing. It's becoming more and more unpredictable. You know, we're in a drought. Like as we speak, like we got one. Like So anyway, I'm going on a tangent. So yeah, this is our growing food is one of the ultimate ways to say fuck the system. You know, this is an act of resistance in a very real way, like a literal way. So let me bring back my screen up. Next, I'm going to really go into us growing food, or starting seeds. I'm just going to go over this because it's almost 9 o'clock. And I'll try to show you some images, and then we'll get into like some of the plant deficiencies. But seed starting is not as hard as you might think. Many of us may have already done it. It just takes care, and it takes attention, and it takes nurturance. So, you know, time and attention equals nurturance and being delicate with this stuff. You know, we really gotta, you know, it's a form of mindfulness for me to go through the process of starting seeds. You know, having a flat, and I'll show you a picture in a second, where I can dole out 72 seeds exactly in very small squares, allows me the opportunity to be very quiet and very intentional about every, thing that I'm doing. And so it's hopefully it'll do the same for you. When we're starting seeds, the materials you need, of course, are seeds. I'm not going to demonstrate this until Saturday, but different seeds are different sizes, and I'm gonna bring my seed library. I'll bring a seed library for you guys to take a look at. You need some sort of mix, so you don't need soil to germinate seeds. You need some sort of soil-like mix, which could be coconut coir, which could be a mixture of coconut coir, which is like the shavings from coconut, peat moss, vermiculite. These are all plant ingredients, and I'll try to bring examples of that when we get together on Saturday. And then you can mix these things up again, because the plant doesn't need the seed doesn't need all the nutrients that it would need when it gets into the ground, when it gets into the actual area that it's going to live and thrive. This seed tray is a temporary environment that will allow it to sprout. But you also can put, some compost in it just to give it a little bit of a nice little pad at home. Then you need some light, because once it sprouts up and breaks through that substrate or whatever, that soil mix, it's going to need some sort of light. If it's in your house, you might want to add some supplemental light in order to make the seedlings, give the seedlings some opportunity to thrive. Of course, you're going to need some sort of container to start the seeds in. You're going to need some tags, or some sort of popsicle sticks or something that you can identify what you planted when. And then you're going to need some sort of watering can or water or a spray bottle or some sort of way of keeping these seedlings moist, keeping the areas that they are growing in moist. The watering of seedlings, as you can see here, this is a flat. Somebody's over here starting some lettuce inside of the flat. When you're watering your seeds and your seedlings, they don't need a lot of water, man. You just need to make sure you saturate, the water, the soil mix. And if you got the right germination mix with the right kind of ingredients, which I'll show you again later, things like vermiculite, perlite, things like peat moss, coconut coir, all these things. If you ever get a bag of potting mix and look in the back of the potting mix ingredients, they'll have all those different types of things inside of it. But, a lot of those ingredients are in there because of their absorptive properties. The fact that they hold water really well is optimal for you to start seeds with, okay? So, when you're watering, make sure you use warm water, because, again, a lot of these seeds, they require, they have a temperature where they sprout at. So if you over there watering them with cold water, then it's fluctuating the temperature that they need in order to activate. So, use some warm water. You need to keep the mix moist, but it don't have to be soaking wet. As the plants germinate, they're going to need more water, but just to get them started, you don't need to drown them. And then also, plants, they need oxygen too, and you can drown a seed. You can't suffocate it with too much water. So you need to be mindful of that as well. Here's an example of some supplemental light. These are T5s. with a T5 lamp. You know, if you work in the school system, you know, they use those fluorescent lights. The T5s are fluorescents, but there are those rods that are at the frequency that are good for plants. So you can, you know, there's a lot of different places that you can go to get those. I mean, I've seen them in Lowe's, but there's like specialty shops now in the city. There's one spot called Lucky Roots, which is on Shepherd Street down by, it's like 2 blocks from Monument, like right across the street from 7-Eleven. It's like right behind the museum and all that, VMFA and all that stuff. So anyway, they got the supplemental lights that you can get. You can see, I've seen them. I actually have seen them in Lowe's though. You know, so if you want to cruise by there, it's a good place to go. You know, you also, I don't know if you can tell, but beneath these, it looks like there's a heating mat. I didn't put that on the list because it's not absolutely necessary, but if you want to keep your seeds at a temperature that's amenable for them to sprout and germinate, then you can get a heating mat that can go underneath your seedling tray that will allow the seedlings to warm up or keep the substrate moist, warm, increasing the germination rate of your seeds. As your seeds, you know, develop from their first leaves to their apical to their true leaves, you know, they'll grow and sprout, and you know, if you keep them watered and keep them moist, then you know, eventually you're gonna be ready to take them outside and plant them in your garden. Now, if you started your seedlings in the house, the challenge with that is that they have been very pampered. You know, if you're like me, you keep your house decent. You know, it's not like it's super cold in your house. You know what I mean? And it's summertime, so it's definitely going to be warm. When you take your plants outside, they may need, since they've had a consistent, you know, temperature in your home, they're going to need what is called hardening off. You're going to have to like get them used to being outside. So, you know, what we do in terms of hardening off our plants, we don't do this all the time, but I will tell you it's a good idea to do it. Take them outside for a day, bring them back in the house. Take them outside, leave them out there for 2 days, bring them back in the house. You know, then take them outside and then plant them in the ground, or maybe leave them out there for 3 days. You know, you got to kind of get them used to the temperatures outside, especially in the fall. It's maybe not so much an issue for the spring, or definitely not an issue for the summer that we're having. Dear God, it's been hot as crap, but you know what I mean? But when it gets into the fall, which is coming right around the corner, you're going to definitely want to harden off your plants as it gets super cold in the night. And what happens to your plants is they can go into shock, and it can like literally damage like your plant's health by being outside in the cold, and they're not used to being outside in the cold. Okay. So just like little babies, you know what I mean? You might want to bring them in the house. You know, it's not good enough. It's not warm enough for them to be outside. And as they get used to being outside, maybe they can go outside without a coat on. All right. All right. So I got 15 more minutes. I'm going to try to speed through this. So common issues that you will experience. Pale green leaves is definitely a lack of nitrogen, usually, right? These are typically, you know, I'm just giving you some broad examples. I'm going to show you some pictures. Long stems, very stringy seedlings, they're not getting enough light. You see, I see that all the time. Like you got seedlings where like the stem is like this long, you know what I'm saying? Like super long, and it's like 2-3 leaves at the top. You know what I'm saying? It's because they're stretching. The seedling starts to stretch trying to find the sunlight, trying to find a light source. So, you know, you got to figure out how to make sure your seedlings get enough light. often, people often don't have a lot of nutrients in the soil, and they leave the seedlings in the tray too long, right? Seedlings, once they get into that second phase of true leaves, they're going to start needing some nutrients, man. And if you leave them inside of those trays, they ain't going to get the nutrients that they need just from no water, Jack. You're going to have to spray them with something, or you're going to have to put them in the ground so they can get the nutrients they need. And then the fourth thing that people often do is overwater. They end up suffocating and drowning their plants because they're watering them too much. It's something that you got to keep in mind. You don't need to water your plant. You don't have to soak them every day. You know what I mean? I'll take that back. In the summer, right now, with the heat like this, you might want to soak them every day. Just be mindful about overwatering. It's like a balance. This is nitrogen deficiency. So as you can see, the yellowing on the side, this is a pepper plant. As you can see, the yellowing that's happening on these leaves. This is a common indicator that your plants are not receiving enough nitrogen inside of the soil or inside of the seedling tray. The way that you can fix this, add compost. First and foremost, that's always going to be my first go-to. If you know what you'll learn from me, if anybody tell me they got a plant disease or plant problem, first thing I'm going to say, add compost. Anytime you got a soil issue, add compost. Add compost. I mean, I'm not saying that that's the answer to everything, but the first challenge often is that you don't have enough organic matter and the soil nutrients that you have your plants in are lacking. Okay, we got a question. What's that? And houseplants as well? Yes. And houseplants as well? Yes. So the thing about plants is like, you know what I mean? Every plant has its own like special needs, you know what I mean? But all plants need nutrients. Doesn't matter the type. Some need more of a specific type than the other, but all of them need nutrients. So you said, how do you feel about bone meal? I'll use it if I get it. I've used bone meal before. I've used bone meal. I've used blood meal. I've used fish meal. I use alfalfa meal. I use kelp meal. I use all of the meals, but every one of them has a different profile, which we'll get into next week when we start talking about organic growing techniques. When we start talking about like NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Like there's like those are the three that when you go to the store, like those numbers would be like 10, 10, 10. It's like 10 parts nitrogen, 10 parts phosphorus, 10 parts potassium. That's the NPK. So when you're dealing with the when you think about the needs nutrient wise for your plants, like I said, you said you got a peace lily, and I considered adding bone meal. Bone meal is going to have phosphorus, and I think it's going to have high phosphorus. It's going to have higher phosphorus, but it's also going to have probably some nitrogen in it. I'm not sure how it's going to do on the potassium level, but it's important to be aware of like the different meals that you could add could also like throw some stuff off. So first I would start with the compost, right? Start with the compost and then like maybe sprinkle a little bit of the meal around just for that particular plant. But yeah, so nitrogen, of course, it's for green leafy vegetables, it's the main thing. Like when you have nitrogen, high nitrogen, your plants are taking up that nitrogen, and that's what's helping with the foliage. The greenery is helping to build out the branches, build out the leaves, And nitrogen is one of the most important pieces of the puzzle, right? It's usually the first thing we talk about. But I will say this: you can have too much nitrogen, and you can actually impact your plants negatively by having too much nitrogen. So you got to be mindful. It's like everything, like I was talking about on Saturday, everything is a balance. But when you start seeing this, a little yellowing of the leaves, yeah, you might want to add some compost. Might think about putting in some kelp meal. Might want to think about putting in some chicken manure, some poultry feathers that have been ground up that'll give you some nice nitrogen, or maybe that blood meal or that bone meal. This is a tomato plant. Purpling on the tips of the leaves is a sign of potassium, I think. Hold up. Let me make sure. I want to tell you I'm wrong. Oh, I'm messing up. Where's my notes? Let me see. I thought I did that today. Give me a second. Where's my notes? I can't find it. Yeah, I think that's potassium.
Dana, this is the last time I'm going to ask you this. The last time she got looked at. Let's say, I hope so. Because it's the last time I'm doing this month. And not for you, but just for her. She has to learn. And she said, I know, I understand. I just what? Because every time she told her mom.
I don't want to hear your whole conversation, Dana. Look, sorry. Okay. Anyway, yeah, that's potassium. That's a potassium deficiency. So, no, so hold on. God damn it. I wrote this down earlier today. I put it in my notes because I was like, yeah, I'm going to show you. And here I go. Can't find shit. Yeah. I'll double check with y'all to make sure that I got that right. But yeah, the purple is usually, okay. Phosphorus deficiency exhibited by purple tip leaves. So yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, phosphorus is the deficiency with the purple tips. Now I have rarely, to be honest, I've rarely seen phosphorus, like a really bad phosphorus deficiency in the plants that I've planted. But I have seen that yellowing. Well, I will take that back. The phosphorus deficiency usually occurs like when I see tomatoes. I've never seen it with greens or even peppers. I've seen it mostly with tomatoes. So, okay, she said, are eggshells and coffee grounds good nitrogen as opposed to compost if you don't have any? Eggshells, not so much for the nitrogen. I've heard of people taking eggshells as a very slow release for calcium deficiencies. I've actually read somewhere where people would boil the eggshells and then pour that as a tool to address blossom end rot, where your plants like start to get real, cruddy and decayed at the tips of the fruit. But the coffee grounds, yeah, I think people put coffee grounds inside of their garden. I would be careful though, because coffee grounds, they're very high in nitrogen, and as a result, it might be a nice kick, you know what I mean, for your garden, for whatever plants you're putting the coffee grounds around. But I would definitely, if you don't compost already, one of our conversations next week will be about starting your own compost. You need to start composting if you're gonna do this, grow your garden really well and really have high quality vegetables or plants, period, it's going to be important for you to get your hands on some good compost. And you can do that in your own house. A bucket. It does not take like a lot of space. It doesn't have to be messy, and it doesn't have to be nasty and stinky either, So, but yeah, you can put them as, I would say, definitely, if you put coffee grounds in your garden, be careful because it could burn your plants. It's like having too much nitrogen can cause your plants to be damaged, right? If anything, I would let the coffee ground sit for a while, let it break down before I put it inside of the garden. All right, let me get back to this. And so I can get y'all out of here in the next couple of seconds. All right, so that's phosphorus. This is potassium, where your leaf tips look a little burnt. Potassium is a little bit harder to control for. So again, any of this stuff pops up. If you get some good quality compost, 50-50 blend from Yardworks or P Rose, it usually will address this. And then if you put down like some stuff like some azomite, kelp meal, I'll show you. So I'll bring some more amendments on Saturday. Definitely fish emulsion. I'm a big advocate for fish emulsion, Neptune's Harvest. This stuff will clear up if you really focus on giving your plants a wide spectrum fertilizer treatment. You know what I mean? Whether it's the biological powders or liquid. I'm going to forego this last piece. I was going to try to do a little quick exercise, trying to hear from you guys to find out what are some of the things that you want to grow, and what's the reason why you would like to grow them. But I'm going to just bring it back to the group and just be like, yo, does anybody have any questions? You know what I'm saying? Like, we take the last 5 minutes just for Q&A off of the strength of the talk. Anybody have any questions? I mean, I know we put a lot in there. So what we're going to do on Saturday is we're going to practice, our seed starting, and everything that I talked about tonight. I'm going to try to show you examples of that. You know what I mean? And then I might throw in a little bit of the sprout thing for Deshonda. You know what I'm saying? So we'll see what we come up with. So yeah, that'll bring us to a close for tonight. Otherwise, I want to say, I forgot to send you all the reading for this week. So I'm going to send you a quick PDF about just like plant biology 101. Nothing too complicated. Again, the main parts of the plant: roots, stem, branches, flower, and fruit. That's it. It's not complicated, but how each one of those things work in tandem with like healthy soil, keeping nice oxygen, keeping air, moisture, being able to breathe, and then having healthy soil is instrumental for your success. And somebody said send that PDF with the George Washington Carver stuff we were talking about. I'll definitely send that. Rather have it on my website. But yeah, thank you for tuning in tonight. I'm looking forward to seeing you all on Saturday. We'll be at the same place, Farm to Family, at 11. And if you want, you can bring a pack of seeds that you actually want to grow. Because I'll bring some materials for you to have your own flat. But if you got your own seeds, it'll be dope because you can use your own seeds, and then you can start your own seedling tray, and we can take it from there. All right. Okay. Does anyone want a cantaloupe seedling? I have a starter if you boom. All right. Peace and love. I will see you all on Saturday. I hope you all enjoyed tonight's talk. And I hope I didn't move too fast. But if not, if I did, if you have any questions on Saturday, just make sure you bring them with you. And, or don't hesitate to email me. You know what I mean? Don't hesitate to send me a message if you have any questions in particular about any plant problems that you're having. All right? All right. Love y'all. See y'all on Saturday. Peace. Oh, yeah. And I'll see, Shonda, I'll see you on Sunday.